We're going to give it another shot. Here we go. Let's try that one more time, guys, because we're at the Village Anchor, and I have a MiFi that is dead to the world, and so I thought I'd be really smart and just use the guest MiFi or Wi-Fi. It wasn't sufficient, so they kindly have put me on the secure Village Network channel, and now we have a beautiful picture. We're going to have beautiful sound, and we're going to hear from Kathryn Callahan of the Humane Society of the United States. She's the state director and has had an amazing career, and she's looking interested like she's not heard any of this before, because it's just like completely do it all over again in the next 5 seconds. But I would really love to have the opportunity to have you share that opening statement with us again, if you wouldn't mind, because what you said was really, really important.
Sure.
And I want to make sure, I'm going to be standing here watching you to make sure that we're broadcasting.
Okay.
Go ahead, Kathryn.
Yeah. The Humane Society of the United States is the most effective animal welfare organization in the United States. I mean, we work on working on legislation, animal care. We have international affiliate called Humane Society International Sanctuaries and animal welfare centers. But you know, the biggest thing I think for what the Humane Society does, because it is so diverse, is that it connects people to what is really happening in the United States and across the world regarding animal protection. We need to have more people listening to this, because we all know that there is that link between animal cruelty and human cruelty. And if you don't recognize that and understand how important it is to deal with animal abuse and neglect in the United States and elsewhere, you will never get to the underlying causes of some of the other things regarding human abuse and neglect. And we can head off a lot of the human abuse and neglect if we will take animal abuse and neglect seriously.
Well, one thing I learned in our seminar with yours and my delightful friend Joy Estes, who's a police detective who did an amazing presentation on animal cruelty, and the things that came out of that presentation are enough to absolutely flabbergast anybody. But one of the things people believe is that abusing animals leads to abusing children, leads to abusing adults or seniors. In actuality, it was explained, and you've told me this before too, it's all concurrent. Somebody who beats a dog is going to beat a child, or abuse a senior, or beat their wife or their husband or boyfriend or girlfriend or whatever.
It is likely.
It's terrifying to think about that. So it's not something that's cumulative, and it's not a beginning or an end. It just is likely to happen.
And one of the things that Joy is doing, and that we continually talk about with law enforcement and social workers, is that when you go into a home to deal with child abuse, particularly if you're wanting to find evidence, is to look around and to be very be clear on whether or not there is also animal abuse happening in that household, because that sort of evidence can also lead to further investigation on what is happening to children in that household, or for that matter, you know, adults, particularly vulnerable adults. We know it is happening across this country, and of course Kentucky is one of the top states for child abuse.
Yeah, we were kind of disgusted to learn that Kentucky comes in below 50th, because there are 50 states, but then there are territories in the District of Columbia, so we're really like technically 54th in animal welfare laws.
Well, Animal Legal Defense Fund comes out terrible. With a scorecard every year. Well, we have our own scorecard, but Animal Legal Defense Fund also has a scorecard, and every January they come out with their rankings, and Kentucky has ranked the worst in the United States for 12 consecutive years. It's very clear on their website exactly how they score them. And we have not had legislators until fairly recently really start talking to those of us who have a level of expertise about what needs to be done. These things are not against any groups. They are simply to provide for animal protection. We also have to educate, and I don't mean that as a derogatory term, but we have to inform, I guess that's a better word, inform groups like Farm Bureau and farm groups and hunting groups that this is not to deny their rights. It actually, in some respects, particularly with respect to farmers, it will help them because it provides them with the means, additional tools to protect their property.
Yeah, and I think it's something that a lot of people don't understand is they're like, well, why would somebody like Kentucky Farm Bureau or the houndsman not want to support a law that was going to protect animals? And this is something that came up again and again and again in the bestiality law that you tried to pass forever, and it finally got passed in this last legislative session. People who hear me say it's finally against the law to have sex with animals in Kentucky. And there are only 5 or so other states that still allow it.
Four
now. Other states now. We're not really exactly. We're just one of those people that finally got onto the real life of knowing that this is not okay. It was not okay to have animals who had sexual abuse constantly from not having something that would outlaw it. And so now you've got the bestiality law, but it was a really hard fought. And I still don't understand why those people opposed it. And maybe you can shed a little bit of light on that.
Partly it's developing relationships. Anytime you have a bill that you need to get passed, you have to establish a certain level of trust. And even it may be that those organizations don't trust HSUS explicitly, they may trust other people who do trust us. And they are the ones who can have those conversations where maybe the other organizations will not have them with us. We need to show them that there is some additional evidence on how this works, how it will not have a negative impact, but we really have to start that conversation going. And I think we did have it this past year. As long as we have some very strong legislators who are willing to say, this is not a partisan bill. This is not one particular organization's bill. This is a bill that's going to benefit a lot of people. And understanding that can go a long way.
Well, I'm so grateful that it passed. And I know that another one that's going to be just huge that's coming up is the concept that at this moment, veterinarians cannot report what they suspect to be animal abuse, which is so counterintuitive to me. It's like telling a teacher you can't report what you expect to be child abuse or what you think might be child abuse. Why is it that veterinarians are prevented from reporting to the authorities if they feel a dog is being abused or a cat is being abused or any animal is being abused?
Well, under Kentucky statutory law, there is a confidential relationship that is created between the client and the veterinarian.
Animal HIPAA.
Sort of, yeah, that's right. And as a result of that, they are not allowed to report neglect and abuse of their clients. We think that there are exceptions to that. We understand about confidentiality and those kind of relationships, but when you consider that an animal may be abused repeatedly and veterinarians cannot report it, that violates a certain level of ethical responsibility for the veterinarians as well.
Absolutely.
I have been called repeatedly by veterinarians who want to have a change in the law so that they can protect those animals, that they can report it to law enforcement. Now, I understand that there are going to be some people who think, veterinarians are going to go off half-cocked and report everything that they see. Well, when you take your animal to a veterinarian, that veterinarian's well-trained. They understand what constitutes abuse and neglect. They're certainly not going to put their practice at
there's
jeopardy.
a broken toenail.
Yeah.
That dog must be abused.
Right.
No.
But what we see a lot in Kentucky law and Kentucky legislation is that groups are so worried about changing the status quo that they're not willing to move our state forward. And so we still have massive animal abuse and neglect in this state. We just need to have people understand that good drafting means everything. And I've talked to numerous county attorneys, Commonwealth attorneys across the state. I'm a Kentucky licensed attorney.
That's right.
I understand the strength of evidence. County attorneys and Commonwealth attorneys are not going to bring cases unless they know they're pretty airtight.
Yeah, they want to win. That's the whole idea. They really want to succeed, and they want to make legislation that's real, and they want to have those laws be able to be upheld in the court system. If you, at this point, have not heard of this one particular practice, which is also a big topic of conversation, it's called soaring, and I'm going to let you explain it, but it has to do with training Tennessee walking horses and other
Right.
horses like that. Talk to us a little bit about the practice of
Tennessee
soaring.
walking horses and a few others, not saddlebreds, but racking horses. There have been instances where, in order to create a higher step in those horses, they do unethical and painful procedures on horses. Here's what happens. You have a Tennessee walking horse and you want to earn a blue ribbon, and you are also a trainer, you know, that is being paid to create something in advance of these gorgeous, beautiful natural gaits on the Tennessee walking horses. And they create them artificially, so that a thing called the big lick. So, traditionally had been is that if you want to create something even greater than what that horse can do, and you want to take the shortcuts, you will put caustic chemicals on the legs of those horses. Could be diesel fuel, mustard oil, any number of different things. Then you wrap them in plastic and they cook. And it would be a day to maybe up to a week. When you unwrap them, those legs are very sore. And we have videotape where horses are in such pain, it is hard for them to even get up off the ground. But once they take the plastic wrap off or any of the other coverings off, then the training begins. They have these large stacks, and let me show you. This is a partial one, where these are called stacks. These horses will live in these 24/7 during their entire show career. They do not frolic in pastures. This is what they wear. If you go on YouTube and you do horse soaring or Tennessee walking horse soaring,
God!
And you will see how when those are strapped across, how they are caused to walk. The caustic materials that soar their legs then have a chain put on the leg. So when that horse steps down and that chain comes and hits that leg, it is sore, it hurts.
So they will. It up really
it's a
fast.
reflex action that they will call the big lick. Now there are other ways of doing it. They can sometimes hollow out under the hoof of the horse, almost to the lamina, so that is exposed sore tissue. Sometimes they will put between that and the hoof a hard object, like a golf ball or something, or simply they will run the horses up and down on concrete until those feet are very sore. So when they step down, they're sore.
Can't they just train them to do the trick like you teach a dog to sit?
You can train horses
without harming them?
Well, you can train them. The question is, will you get that high of a gait, number one? Second of all, you know, it's a lot quicker to do it this way.
There's something wrong. There's something really wrong with that.
A blue ribbon.
Yeah.
On federal level, there is a bill that was passed overwhelmingly in the House. More than half the Republicans in the House and all of the Democrats voted in favor of the PAST Act. This act would do away with the stacks and the chains because it's very difficult, number one, for inspectors to go into these facilities and tell whether soaring has been taking place. You can swab, but you may not get those results back right away. But these animals are still going out. There are also, when they palpate the pasterns on them, sometimes these horses are trained not to react. And this is how they're trained. It's called stewarding. They may hit them in the head, or they may use cattle prods on them to train them. It's like, you know, the Pavlov's dog. You train them not to react to something rather than to react to something. And these are the sort of things that the inspectors will not necessarily be able to identify with those because they are part of the whole process. The other thing is to have proper inspectors. Some of the inspectors in these show rings are paid by the management of the show. It's the conflict of interest that's there rather than somebody under the USDA. When the USDA's inspectors going to the show rings, they're finding many more evidence of soaring than they have with these other inspectors that come. So the PAST Act would also put the inspectors under the authority of the USDA, not the show ring management. But the show ring management still has to pay for those inspectors. So there is a certain level of accountability independent of the show ring management. We need to get this bill passed. And so we have been going around the country asking people to contact their U.S. senators to ask them to co-sponsor the PAST Act. In the case of Senator Mitch McConnell, we are asking him to call it for a vote. And people can call even the local offices in Kentucky.
Yeah, that's
and just
a good
leave
idea.
a message for Mitch McConnell to call the PAST Act for a vote and get it passed. And that's Senate Bill 1007. So if people will call, that'd be great.
Do we know where our congressmen and senators stand on this bill in the state of Kentucky?
John Yarmouth has, I believe, co-sponsored, if not he has
Yes, that's right.
sponsored. And but all the other Republican representatives did not vote for it.
Interesting.
It's unfortunate.
Even though over half of the Republicans in Congress voted for it.
Yes.
But ours didn't.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Those are some phone calls that obviously need to be made then. Let's say hi to some of the folks who are watching. Courtney Gray says, two of my favorite people.
Oh.
And you're one of ours there, girlfriend. Jamie Lawson. Hugh is watching us from over there at the table. Will Adams is watching. Sherry Vise, Kit Kay, Janet Harvey, our Rebecca Eves, two of my heroes, and you're ours. We love you, Rebecca. Lee Chotner and Desiree Philby is watching. This is Waggin Wednesday, and it's always an animal-related issue of some sort that we bring up on the show. And sometimes it's cute and fuzzy little kittens, and sometimes it's wonderful, playful puppies, and other times it's talking about Metro Animal Services, and sometimes it's talking about adoption, and sometimes it's talking about really, really hard topics like what the HSUS director for the state of Kentucky, Kathryn Callahan, has had to deal with during her entire career. And I think that one of the things that really is despicable to me is that people, for some reason, point at the HSUS as the enemy, and I don't know that they even know what you do. I mean, honest to God, they just say, oh, it's terrible. Some woman on Facebook the other day was like, oh, well, none of the legislation they put through is, ever passed. And I'm thinking, like, everything I ever have known to be passed that benefited animal welfare is either written by you, co-written by you, sponsored, somehow by you. You're the one who's doing the lobbying. You're the one who's making all the calls, going back and forth to Frankfurt every day during every legislative session at all hours of the day and night. How could anybody say that HSUS is not successful in getting legislation passed?
See, that's the narrative.
Yeah.
And that's false and misleading information. And there are legislators that are out there, and I've had my time with them as well, who will just spew the propaganda back at me. Because they do not listen. I want to sit down with every single legislator. I will have conversations with anybody, and I have, even in our own county. There have been some people who have negative things to say. I've invited them for coffee, and they haven't come. So I am very open to talk about what we do, seeking the help of others. We need to break down some of these barriers. We continue these barriers. Don't complain about the legislation. Now, as far as what things that I do, you may never see what I do. You don't know what I do. I may be very quiet. I go to legislators and say, we're willing to help you as little or as much as you want. If you need help with some language to know whether it works across the country, we can help with that. It doesn't mean you have to adopt it. It just means we can advise. If you want training of some kind, particularly law enforcement, animal control, we can bring that to you free of charge.
That's amazing.
Free of charge.
And I think one of the things that's really important to know is that as an organization, you guys have been instrumental in helping to educate shelters all around the state of Kentucky on how to become real no-kill shelters or working towards no-kill status, as opposed to being places in the country where people just bring their dogs, dump them, and they get shot and backloaded into the mass grave in the backyard.
Yeah. Before
You've
I
been
became
huge
state
with
director,
that.
I had a private practice that was all animal related. And I represented plaintiffs in 2 cases where we sued the counties over their animal shelters. Both cases, they were ultimately settled. And they have worked well so far. We can get this done. We just have to start with the grudge matches, opening up our minds, sitting down. I sound like a broken record, I know.
It's okay.
But this is what we need to be doing.
You just keep repeating it until people believe it,
yeah,
or hear it for the first time. Hey, George Slink, good to see you, buddy, from Bridgehaven. Sunny Howell says, hey, y'all, she's with Pig Kids, the therapy pigs, and they do wonderful work, too, especially for kids in foster care. I'll tell you what, how's it going over there, Hugh? You having a good time? You enjoying your drink?
Oh, I thought you were asking about my feet.
Well, both. I mean, but we need to thank Kevin Grangier for allowing us to be here today, because he's already given $15,000 this year to animal organizations. He's a huge animal lover. His cat got lost this spring, which you remember, and he was heartbroken. But fortunately, it came back, which was great. He got it back. But he gives donations all the time. Whenever there's an event, you'll hear about it. The Grasset Grama and Lemieux and Village Anchor all are huge supporters of Louisville in general. He's graciously allowed me to do my show, judges panels and everything else at Lemieux. And I really appreciate the fact that all of the money that is being gathered for these wonderful fundraisers that he does goes to animal charities.
I think that's wonderful.
Fantastic.
I would also like to put a challenge out there to a number of the prominent individuals in the various counties to step up. Start talking to your legislators, having these conversations. If you want information, I'm just a phone call or an email away.
Yes.
I'll even drive across the state to come to a meeting if you want me to come to that meeting, because we need to make some changes. But we need to do it. I mean, HSUS is one of the most mainstream organizations, which blows my mind when I hear criticisms that somehow we're extreme or radical. We're not. We are so mainstream as far as the rest of the country goes.
Right.
So we just need to have these conversations. But I would love to have someone like a prominent restaurant owner, industry representatives come out and say, let's get this done in the state of Kentucky.
Absolutely. I think it's, I've said so many times in the work that I do with outreach with people experiencing homelessness and with animals and with people with mental illness and with substance use disorder. I say all the time, we can't rely on our government to take care of us. We have to take care of each other.
Yes.
And this is being evidenced in the Bahamas right now. All those people who are, out there with their jet skis and their boats and everything else, trying to help the people who are stranded and who are, in terrible condition and would not be able to, get medical help or get to the, areas that are safe, because a huge portion of the Bahamian Shelf is underwater right now.
Right. Yeah.
And those are people who are taking care of themselves, because there's a limit to the amount that government can do.
I agree.
And
that's
we've
where
come to rely
nonprofits-
upon it for everything.
Nonprofits. I'm not sure what we will be involved in the Bahamas, but I do know that our disaster team is located in various places where the hurricane has already hit
Yes,
in the United States. So we are prepared to help where we can, as we have with almost every disaster, including when tornadoes have come through Kentucky.
Yes, I think that's huge too. And there are animals that are going to be relocating, I'm sure, from the southeastern United States. It's coming ashore Jacksonville and then working its way up, landfall in the Carolinas. There will be animals that are being evacuated, and one of the memes that's going around is, if you're leaving, take a shelter dog with you, because they have to evacuate too. And there are circumstances in things like hurricanes where unfortunately shelter dogs have to stay.
I agree.
And there are brave employees who stay with them.
Yes. What I would say, though, is even on that, though, do it in a coordinated manner with some organizations that have the boots on the ground.
Right.
We have too many people who go into those areas because their hearts are really big, but they end up being more of a problem.
Right.
Because then they may end up having to be rescued.
They need to be rescued too, exactly. So when we get to a point, Kathryn, in the state of Kentucky where we can actually say that we're not at the bottom of the barrel with animal welfare laws, let's think of a wish list of the kinds of laws that you would like to see put in place. We managed, as we said before, to finally get the bestiality law passed. This year we're going for the veterinarian reporting. So it will not be a crime for a veterinarian to say, look, I think this animal is being abused.
And I think that's significant.
It is
in
huge.
relation to also the animal sexual assault bill that does pass.
Yes.
I mean, how are they going to identify these people unless you can actually see some of the animals that we brought in bad shape?
Right. What's a wish list for you of the laws you'd like to
it's
see?
such a long wish list, but
Yes,
here are a few of the things. Number one, I think we have to change our cruelty laws. We have two. We have a misdemeanor cruelty law that does need some revision. It's very convoluted. A lot of animal control officers cannot follow it well. But I think it needs to be extended further. Even more importantly right now, the only felony animal protection bill law we have is the felony torture bill. But there are two separate levels of intent involved in that, and that second level of intent, and I won't quote it, but it needs to be removed and possibly rewritten. I've talked to Commonwealth attorneys who said that they cannot convict under that law. We got it, but it is useless except in few circumstances. Now that doesn't necessarily mean we want everybody shoved in jail, but we do need to have something that is going to be bigger than just misdemeanors. Law enforcement doesn't take misdemeanors as seriously. They are going to be felonies. We also know, of course, that the FBI is treating animal abuse as a felony,
yes,
like other felonies, even
as
if it is not
be
a felony in the various states.
Absolutely.
And for reporting purposes, it's very important that we have something that has some teeth. So Commonwealth attorneys, county attorneys would like to see an upgrade in that. I would too. I think it could be we need to have protection regarding domestic violence orders so that we could have appropriate protections from animals so they're not used as some inducement to keep an abused spouse or other family member in the household.
You leave me, I'll kill your dog kind of thing.
Yes, that's exactly right. We need to have a cost of care passed in the state, which means that if an offender has a large-scale confiscation, for example, that strains animal shelters beyond their capacity, which requires them to euthanize healthy animals, simply make space for the animals they're holding during trials. This way, you will have, and it falls on the taxpayers of the various counties.
Right.
This way, the offender would be required to put up money to pay for those animals during the course of the trial and any appeals. In a non-cost of care state like New Hampshire, we had a case where we did go in and we took care of those animals during the entire trial. There were approximately 84 Great Danes that were being bred in a mansion. But if you open the door of that mansion, you'll see it's covered with fecal matter everywhere. And those animals were confiscated. HSUS paid $2.6 million to care for those animals during the trial.
Wow.
So how many counties in Kentucky can come up with that kind of money? And certainly nonprofit organizations can't continue to do that either. There are a number of states that have cost of care legislation. We need to get that in Kentucky. So it would allow counties to hold these animals and not have it fall on the taxpayers. It should fall on the offender. Even if they end up being found not guilty, somebody had to pay for the care of those animals, and it should be the owner. We also need to have a mechanism for funding spay-neuter in the state of Kentucky.
I was thinking about that just when I was down at HSUS, LMAS a while ago. How's it going there, Hugh? How's the show going? Excellent.
Yep.
Good. Just
Quality control.
Just checking on him all the time. I was just down at LMAS, and it's the unfortunate responsibility of employees of Louisville Metro Animal Services to tell people that they can't bring in a dog. And primarily because the shelter is full all the time, they do a very strenuous inquisition when somebody brings a dog in to make sure that it's not their dog that they're trying to surrender, because Louisville Metro Animal Services is under no obligation to accept owner surrenders, although they can make appointments to do so, but they are obliged to take in strays. So people will say, this is a stray dog I found, and it won't be. It'll be their dog, and they're trying to pass it off. So, I stood there today because a friend of mine called me and said, I'm down here and I found this puppy and I really want to take it, and keep it. And I said, but you have to take it to Metro and register it first, and then ask to field foster, right? So it's a beautiful 4-month-old Mastiff puppy, just adorable. And so we went inside, they gave it its shots, they gave it its flea and tick medication, gave her a crate, gave her a blanket, gave her bags of food, gave her a new little harness and collar, did everything they could to keep this dog from having to come into the shelter. So the dog is now going to be able to live with her and stay with her through the 5-day stray hold, hoping that, the owner might come forward. It's not chipped and it's not fixed. And then if that's not the case, then she may be able to keep this puppy. The problem was we kept getting more and more puppies. You know, we just have so many puppies coming out, and there are no laws against having more puppies.
Right. Yes.
So what do we do about the constant problem with pet overpopulation?
Well, first of all, we have to take responsibility for it because it is a responsibility for our state. We do have mandated, required statutory shelters in the state of Kentucky. We have approximately 93 operating right now as either county operated or county contracted animal shelters. And we're still sending thousands of animals out of Kentucky into rescue groups in other states.
Yeah.
And we're still euthanizing for space
Yeah.
in Kentucky.
Which is a shame.
It needs to stop. We have had a program through license plate sales, specifically money earmarked for spay-neuter, but those grants are very small. I think the last one for those counties applied for them was $2,500 per year, and they
Gosh.
had to come up with matching money for those county fiscal courts. There are a number of fiscal courts that aren't either going to think that they have the money or they will not do that. So I think there might have been somewhere about 34, 36 applications that were honored that money would go into those counties out of 122 counties.
Wow.
We're not going to deal with it.
No.
I have been a big proponent for what's known as a pet food surcharge. And before everybody gets their panties in a
Pet
twist,
food surcharge.
panties in a twist over it.
Yeah,
This is
because pet
simply
food is already expensive, but that's okay.
So I'll give you an example. Maryland passed a pet food surcharge a few years ago. They simply had a surcharge that is paid when the pet food is registered with the state, and then it's passed on through to the consumer. In Maryland, that worked out to 36 cents per pet per year.
36 cents per pet per year.
Per year.
Wow.
And they raised over $600,000 for spay-neuter programs in Maryland. We could do that in
So would it
Kentucky.
be like $1.08 for Brady, Gracie, and Wyatt? Is that what you're saying? A year.
Yes,
For me, $1.
to raise the funds for the spay-neuter programs, and those would be distributed to the spay-neuter programs that would need to be developed further.
Wow, that's
but
pretty
it still
amazing
would
when you
be.
think about
Right
it.
now, even in the shelters, there's no oversight of Kentucky's county animal shelters. So as much as they are required to have certain standards, minimum standards, there's nobody saying, you know what, you're not doing what you're supposed to do.
So everybody can do it the way they think is best. There's no
Well, if they do it,
SOP,
then
in other words.
yeah, but of course they could be like my clients and then suing the counties, which
Yeah.
require the taxpayers to pay money for lawsuits
Right.
instead. I think that it's time for us to really look into that because there's not enough money coming in through the license plate sales. If we can do it, if Delaware can do it, if Maryland can do it, if West Virginia can do it, why can't we?
Hey, Lisa Nagel just tuned in.
Hey, Lisa Nagel.
This is a perfect time to bring you up, babe. Lisa Nagel, Officer Lisa Nagel.
Detective Lisa Nagel.
Detective Lisa Nagel. She's an LMPD. So we are very proud of her because one of the things that, well, first of all, we call Lisa for everything. She's on speed dial for me every time something happens. I'm sure she's sitting there sometimes in her soft bunny slippers watching a TV show thinking, I can just relax. Oh, Tara's calling. This is not a good thing. So God bless you, Lisa Nagel, for being there for us all the time. There was a big article that was published today, actually a news story that got on our local television stations as well, about a guy who was arrested on suspicion of dogfighting. And I cannot tell you the number of people that say, dogfighting in Louisville? That's ridiculous.
It happens. It happens, and it happening across the state. There were even legislators when we did the dog fighting possession law back in 2016. They were
Yep.
saying, "Oh, it's not happening in Kentucky." Of course, it is.
It's happening in our city.
And so,
Tell us about this guy who got arrested.
well, I would refer you to WDRB, WAVE, WHAS, any of those that have them on their websites.
And I think the Courier Journal is probably, if they haven't already, going to pick it up. They
Yeah.
they do stuff online all the time. But basically, this guy was arrested, and I'm grateful for that. And they found a dog on a 2-foot chain. And the guy had posted all kinds of pictures, which is, the
I think they also
stupid
had a
criminal
treadmill
thing.
that
And
was
he had
on
a
there
dog
for
on a
training the-
treadmill.
So
He's talking about training dogs, but he says it's not for dog fighting, and I'm thinking, is there a dog Olympics that I'm missing out on here somewhere? But apparently when they went to the house, he had a lot of dog fighting paraphernalia, and the language that he used, using these, like letters and numbers, one win,
Yes.
one XW or something, however
One
it was,
XW, one time
meaning-
win.
and in 42 minutes or something, and that is highly indicative to trained professionals like Lisa Nagel, for example.
And it was Lisa's investigation.
I'm sure it was, because she's fabulous.
Well, in 2006, they expanded the dog fighting law to allow investigators to prosecute based on dogs that were being possessed for fighting other dogs.
Yes.
You have to look at the totality of the evidence that's involved, what kind of things they use for training these dogs specifically for dog fighting, evidence of scarring on the face and the fronts of these dogs. All of that evidence could determine whether you could prosecute specifically the change in the dog fighting law for what was possession of dogs for fighting other dogs. That was a huge change in the law that gave the tools to law enforcement to get onto the property to prosecute these individuals, because what you have, otherwise you would have had to catch them in the act. And when you have a raid on a dog fighting ring, which you remember also, it can involve other types of crimes as dog fighting. Prostitution, drugs, illegal firearms, illegal alcohol.
Lots and
all
lots
of that
of gambling
was
too.
taking place.
A lot of money
and a
changing
lot
hands.
of, we're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars involved in a really high-scale dog fighting ring. So in these cases, they were allowed then to go get warrants, get on the property, and arrest these individuals and prosecute them, so that you wouldn't have to try to get them while they are in the act of dog fighting. What happens then, law enforcement will come into the ring, and everyone will scatter, and they'll say, "It's not my dog, so who can you prosecute?"
Yeah. Linda Mattingly just tuned in and said, "Hi, girls. Hannah Truxell is watching, one of our great defenders of animals, Melanie Mansfield, Judy Foster. Hey, Judy. Great animal rescuer. Justin Spicer is watching us, too. Gosh, you guys, I'm so grateful that you turned in for this Waggin Wednesday. We're at the Village Anchor. Kevin Grangier was gracious enough to allow us to come in. All these guys are doing their side work and prepping for a great dinner. Kevin, of course, has Grasa Grama and Lamu and the Village Anchor. And he gives a tremendous amount of money to animal charities, $15,000 so far this year, and we've still got 3 months left, so 4 months left. Keep on giving, Kevin. Thank you so much. And I appreciate the fact that you go to a restaurant, you buy food, and they give a portion of the proceeds of the tab to Rebecca at the Aero Fund, to Bunny at Animal Care Society, to these wonderful people and organizations that spend so much time and effort trying to help save animals from fates that are oftentimes worse than death. There are times when I feel like an animal's life is probably going to be better across the Rainbow Bridge than what they're living in.
I think that if the public also recognizes, money is desperately needed in so many of these organizations.
Yes.
What we do, though, is we work at the causes. We work to try to eliminate the causes so that we don't get to the level that requires that amount of money.
Right.
But working hand in hand with the various groups and the people, we can get things accomplished in our state. And so I want to thank Kevin also for the work that he's doing.
Yeah, I appreciate him too, and the fact that he lets me come in and do my shows in his restaurants, which is always very nice too. Kathryn, any thoughts that you want to share with people about what they can do to help?
Yes.
First of all, spay and neuter. Second of all, see something, say something. Do you see something
particularly
going
with hot
on?
cars, since we were not able to get...
The hot cars are important.
Yes, hot car bill did not pass at 2 years. It went overwhelmingly through the Senate, did not pass in the House. It's dead stop.
We don't know why.
Well, the propaganda was, and according to one legislator, is they were worried that people were going to take that as an excuse to break into people's cars, that they were actually going to walk around with small dogs and break into cars to appear. I think it's ludicrous, but you hear all these very strange things coming out of Frankfurt. So I don't know if it's true or not.
Well, I can tell you that my friend Kyle Shepard, who works at the zoo and is a wonderful animal lover of all types of animals, was standing at Kroger the other day, and 11 minutes went by after she'd gone in and told the person at the desk that they needed to page for an owner because there was a car that had a dog in it that was obviously in distress. And she was trying to figure out what to do. She said, I don't know whether I can break the window or not. I don't know what's going to happen if I break the window. You know, some guy come out firing now that we don't have any kind of gun regulation, you know, in Kentucky. What is one to do? And there are those of us who wouldn't think twice about doing it because we're impulsive and we just act, and you know, we see dog on other side of glass, must break glass, and we do it. You know, carry a brick in your car. Then there are others who have a little bit more measured approach. What should I do? Should I make the call? You know, well, Rebecca Eves said to me the other day, you know, she said, call the police, first of all. Mm-hmm. And then the second thing you need to do is, if you have, you know, to make that decision to do it, videotape yourself and say, I've called the police, I've alerted the store owner, I've done everything I can, I've waited to, you know, 10 to 15, whatever it is, minutes, and this animal is in distress, and I'm going to break the window. And I think that's really a smart idea, so that you're documenting a measured response and making people know, hey, I thought about it. I really did think about it. But this dog, obviously a dog for the most part, could die.
Well, bottom line is we need to have a law. We need to have this law
Something
passed.
that would be
And
clear.
It needs to be understood that immunity that is presented by a hot car bill would not attach the individual if they didn't follow the various steps. We're trying to locate the owner, calling law enforcement, and so forth.
Yeah.
You know, even if we disagreed a little with some of the language in there, we came out and supported it because we knew it was better than having nothing. We did not write that bill, but we certainly supported it when we realized that we needed to have something.
Okay, listen to this. Hannah Truxell said, I had a hot car situation issue this weekend. I called 911, had store page owners, LMPD arrived immediately. Props to them, and we're ready to break the window immediately. Lisa also said, this is a good one, also document the temperature.
Yes.
So if you can show, you know, screenshot the temperature at that time via the Weather Channel or whatever, so that you've got that evidence, which is going to, and then you hope that Lisa Nagel is the police officer that comes.
Yes. Well, and you know,
She would be maybe a little less likely to arrest me. No, just kidding.
I'm more concerned, frankly, even though I know it happens all over the state, I'm more concerned with the small counties that have small sheriff's offices,
Yes.
have maybe one animal control
That's right.
officer who
That's
doesn't
right.
even may work on a weekend. And what ends up happening when you have an animal in a hot car and that deputy is working on a traffic accident on the other side of the county?
That's right.
There's no one that can come
What
and
are they
save
gonna
that
do?
animal. You know, large groups like Walmart, Target, any national groups could post things in their parking lots that remind people that you will be prosecuted if you leave an animal in a hot car.
Yeah, and then
the
somebody
education
said that
takes
they got
over.
their dog stolen out of their car at Walmart a couple of days ago because they ran inside to get a new leash and collar and were in there for 15 minutes, and they said they left the car running and somebody came and stole their dog.
Why bring the dog with you
I don't
anyway?
know why you go. I don't know, because people bring their dogs everywhere now.
You know, there's
And
one
there's
place
no
in
real
another
reason
state
why.
that has a little housing for animals to be left in a safe location with a lock on it.
Really?
That is air conditioned. They have a few of these available for people who are trying to run in quickly
Like
to
a
get
little
something
kennel
done.
kind of thing.
I think, you know, people
Air-conditioned
aren't
kennel.
necessarily bad people.
No.
You know, they will think that I've just got a few minutes, I need to come in here and get a gallon of milk, for
Yeah, but
example.
that never happens.
Well,
because
they-
then you
they
start
don't
shopping.
know. Or they'll meet someone,
Yep.
or there's a long line at the checkout counter.
Yep.
So they didn't intend to be gone long,
That's
but
right.
they are.
And then the
the
dog
whole
dies.
adage about cracking your window,
No.
it does not help.
No, I think one of the things that terrified me was when we were talking, I think Joy Estes explained this to me, how quickly the temperature can rise in a car, even when it's not really as hot as it, you know, you would think it would have to be, because the humidity is high and the insides of the car just create this box-like effect. And so you leave and you got the windows cracked this much, There's no air movement. There's no circulation.
Right.
And the dog can suffocate. I mean, that's what happens. They suffocate.
Well, 10 minutes, an animal can die
Yeah.
in a car, depending
Yeah.
on the temperature, depending on the humidity. We need to have an understanding of what that means, but there has to somehow be teeth in the law to require people. I mean, the same way, what do we do when seatbelts first came in? We didn't wear seatbelts. We didn't think that it was really all that necessary. Now there are laws requiring people to wear seatbelts.
Yeah.
And most of the time it happens. And I will say there's been a number of times I've been in cars with people that they don't use their seatbelts.
Yes.
But and it's a cultural issue. We need to just get that information out there. Whether it's going to be through the churches. I'd like to see more churches actually
I would
have having conversations about this with their communities. In some parts of the state, you know, churches are the heart of those counties.
Absolutely.
Let's get those churches to start talking about it as well.
Well, you know, and one of the other things that I think that a lot of people don't really think about or understand is that you have to take a test, take a test, and pass the test and get a license to drive a car. You don't have to do anything to get an animal. Sometimes, if you go to a reputable organization, you have to get a vet check, you have to get a reference, they'll check with your landlord. But for the most part, anybody can get a pet with no rule books. And pets are beginning to be passed around like end tables. You know, I can't keep it anymore. Oh, I have to rehome it. Oh, I'm moving to an apartment that doesn't take animals. Oh, you know, blah, 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 whatever it is. There's always, I can't imagine ever giving a dog away, ever giving a cat away, a pet away. You know, because I feel like once you adopt an animal, they're with you for the rest of their lives, or your life.
But there are circumstances.
And there are circumstances, and I'm not being rough, I'm not being harsh. But I'm saying that there needs to be some sort of education, and you provide that too, of what it's like to be a pet owner and what the responsibility is and what to do in the event that you have a situation like that.
Sure. You know, there are mechanisms in areas like here. Kentucky Humane Society, for example, has a pet line. If people have questions about behavior,
Yeah.
they can call that. I
Yeah.
wish we had that in every part of the state.
I know.
I wish more information was going out to the rest of the state
Yes.
that they could call in as well.
Yeah.
Because a lot of these animals that are being turned into shelters are for behavioral issues. They can't afford to hire a trainer, and so what do you do?
And socialization of animals from the time that they're small, if you get a puppy, introducing them to other animals, teaching them the basic manners. You know, everybody laughs about sit, stay, roll over, lie down, but it's basically giving an animal some parameters, some boundaries to work with so that they will respond more to you. A wait, you know, to keep them from running away. A come, a recall command. Those things all play a big part in the dog's later life.
You know, and it doesn't take a whole lot of money.
No.
We have a way of being very creative in this state. One of the things is for animal control officer training I have recommended, and I know there's going to be some online training that may be available for animal control officers coming up, but the hands-on training is really necessary. Why not establish, and I have promoted this, pursuing a mentorship program. We know some good shelters that are around the
Yes.
state that are operated well, have very well trained staff.
Yes.
They could then become mentors for other shelters, if nothing more than simply allowing an animal control officer or a shelter director to come and spend
Shadow.
a day
Yeah, just be a
shadowing a
shadow.
very shelter.
Great
and
idea.
some shelters have allowed that. We need to do more of that. It's not
Yes.
going to cost 1 cent
Yes.
to do something like that.
That's
but they could be
fantastic.
official programs that be established in the state.
And, you know, community partnerships are also extremely important. For instance, you know, if citizen groups can get involved with doing things like, you know, we have some very forward-thinking Metro Council people in this town. Nicole George is very interested in what's going on in her district, and she's very concerned about, you know, how things, hey, Michelle Lawson, glad you're here. Very, very interested in what's going on in her district. So, you know, we have actually found someone who is an animal watch captain, kind of like a block watch captain in District 21. And I'd love to do that with all the other districts, because then it gives the city council person the opportunity, a Metro Council person, to call their animal watch captain if there's an issue.
Right.
To say, hey, you know, I understand there's a neighbor whose dogs are always getting out and this dog is menacing people or whatever. Thinking in terms of doing things for ourselves, again, as opposed to expecting the government to do it for us.
all of this, I think the bottom line comes down to this. We need to collaborate, get off Facebook, quit arguing about things, work together. And I've heard this, and people think, oh, you're talking about kumbaya moments. No, but we need to get over the grudges, the complaining, work together. There are ways to do it. I've worked with people that, probably do not like me very much, but still I've been able to work with them on certain issues. I want people to reach out and say, we want to be involved. And then when I tell you what you can do, get over your comfort level and do it. And then report back or work with us. If people wanted to come lobbying with me and meeting with people, I'm happy to do that.
Humane Lobby Day. Let's talk about that before you go, because that's a great example. And last year it changed drastically. It used to be a big rally in the rotunda, and then people would scatter and try to meet with their legislators. Last year we didn't do the rally. I don't know whether that's a thing of the past now or not, but last year we did.
There's another group that's going to be doing the
Well,
rallies.
let me tell you, last year was great for us because we went and met with tons of legislators one-on-one or three-on-one or whatever, and had the opportunity to really talk to the people that were making those decisions for us, as opposed to just ranting and raving in the rotunda.
Yes. Well, I think that's the most important part of all this.
Absolutely.
Is meeting with your legislators. This is something that has been consistently done across the country with HSUS spearheading, but we can bring in partners. If somebody wants to partner with us on that, that's fine. But we know one day where we can get a room in Frankfurt. Unfortunately, unlike some other state capitals, there's not a lot of extra space around that area to meet. But meeting in the Capitol, when we can get a room, usually we try to do it around the first or second week of February because it's really fairly early in the session. We will send out information. We have registration just so we can keep track of people. But last year, I think we had over 80 people come, and most of them were brand new. We tried for as much as we possibly could to set up appointments with their legislators. These legislators want to hear from their constituents.
Yes, they do.
And it made a difference. We had people co-sign, co-sponsor the animal sexual assault bill after those meetings. So it does make a difference. If you cannot come to Frankfurt, though, I can tell you, you can make appointments with your legislator in your home district.
Absolutely.
Invite them for coffee. I'm a big proponent for drinking coffee with your legislator or anybody else to discuss animal issues. And my husband is laughing at me because he knows I would drink a whole lot of coffee. But it's important to meet with your legislators. You can do it in your own district, where everybody is comfortable. Why not? Get 5 of your friends or 10 of your friends and meet with those legislators. Of coffee. And just for a half hour, sit and talk about animal issues that concern you. Coordinating with organizations like ours is important only because we know what is happening during the legislative session and what is happening across the state.
And Michelle Lawson mentioned, the arguing slows the helping of animals, which is really true.
I'm sorry, say that again?
The arguing slows the helping of animals, whether it's animals, that you're arguing about on Facebook or whether you're, arguing about legislation. It's like the animals are not getting help.
Take it private.
Exactly. Just go and have an argument in the back room. And don't worry about it. We've got to get out of here because they're getting ready to have dinner, and they've done a fabulous job getting ready around us and giving us this time to have this wonderful conversation. But, I want to thank you, Kathryn, because, you're always one of the go-to people that has the answers to the questions. You have a brilliant mind and an engaging personality, and you've done so much.
Well, thank you, Tara. Thanks for giving a platform to discuss these issues every Wednesday. It's wonderful, and I hope that people will feel that they can reach out.
They will, and just for the fun of it, give them the information on how they can get in touch with the Humane Society of the United States.
Okay, the Kentucky, for me, you can contact me at the following email, Callahan at humanesociety.org. And if you send me an email, I will respond. If I don't respond right away, I'm probably busy, but feel free to send me another email just to poke me.